Welcome to the Fan Counters podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And this week on the show, we've got a great guy for you. It's
Michael Feifer, who is a Hollywood producer and director who creates several movies for TV each year. You might know him from some of the gruesome creations like Ed Gein, The Butcher of Plainfield, or Bundy, an American Icon.
Or some happier films like The Dog Who Saved Christmas, which was the film where I became familiar with his work. Also his latest holiday film, Christmas with the Andersons, which starred a good combination of actors. George Stultz, you'll know him from Seventh Heaven, and Christy Carlson Romano from Even Stevens. And they made a great couple on that film. And some other favorites of mine, including Deadly Daycare, 16 and Missing, and Cradle Swapping. So, without further ado,
let's get to it.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fan Counters, the podcast.
You're amazing. You need to come to Hollywood. I'm going to make you famous.
There was this mob of people that were on the sidewalk that were being held back by a couple of police officers, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
I don't have fans. That's a misnomer.
Are you kidding me?
You don't know where those pictures are going to end up.
Oh, I don't want to go there. That's why we call it Fan Counters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
As a startup podcast, we're really thrilled that you decided to join us to relive your career, provide some answers to the questions that we really want to know about. So thanks for being here. And you have a birthday as well. Happy birthday.
Yes.
Happy
well, it's
birthday.
9/11, so it's not the greatest birthday anymore. In fact, it was always the first day of school. Now it's 9/11. And the family, now we celebrate on September 10th or 12th lately.
I can understand.
But I'll be filming my next movie on September 11th. So
Super fun.
Well, plug that right away. What's the title of that?
that one is called Party Mom.
Okay.
And that is not a comedy.
Okay.
It's a serious thriller about the dangers of drunk driving. Imagine mothers in Beverly Hills, like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, having parties for their kids and bringing alcohol.
Okay.
And then the kids drink and get in a car accident, and some of them die. It's actually it's a morality tale.
Wow.
And that's designed to sell and play on Lifetime Channel. So it's kind of your perfect Lifetime movie.
And when will that be out?
Well, we start shooting September 6th. So generally a movie like that will be out 9 months to 1 year after the first day of production.
Okay.
Because, production's a few weeks, and then post-production's a few months. And then by the time you sell it and then schedule it in, it's 9 months to a year later.
I got things a little wrong. For those of you listening, I sent out a little show prep guide, and I thought, man, he started real late in his career. This must have been a life-changing thing, but come to find out,
Not so much.
you're from an entertainment family.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, basically, my family's from New York, and my dad worked for 20th Century Fox in the late 60s, early 70s. And then they closed down everything in New York, and they moved us out to Los Angeles. So my dad was director of television research at Fox. He wasn't really on the creative side. He was more on the administrative side. But they moved us out, and my dad worked at 20th Century Fox for a while. And then what happened was a faction of people got fired from 20th Century Fox, which happens often at studios. And he moved on. And he had I think this is the story, but from what I understand, he had the idea of taking Carol Burnett's television show, which was an hour long, and cutting it down into 30-minute episodes and then syndicating it and selling it all over the world. And he had a friend who knew Carol Burnett. So he went to the friend who knew Carol Burnett, and that friend went to Carol Burnett, and she agreed to open up a distribution company to sell the show. And they did something like $50 million or something in sales.
Oh, my gosh.
In the late 70s or early 80s of her television show, selling it all over the world in 22-minute episodes. Something happened there. It's a long story, but that all shut down. And my dad had to figure out what he was going to do, so he started making low-budget movies.
Okay.
So I don't know if you looked up my father or my background, but my father had a whole series of movies called Witchcraft, which I produced Witchcrafts 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. They just finished last year really, really low-budget versions of Witchcrafts 14, 15, and 16.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness.
It's like it won't go away. But so my father was making really low budget independent films when I was in high school and then in college. And what happened was, with the explosion of VHS, when VHS happened, stores just needed content, and they just needed product to make a movie. The amazing thing about VHS back in the day was that you couldn't buy. There was no VHS retail. You could only rent it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So VHS tapes back in the day, the quote unquote retail price was $89.99 or $99, right? And so it was really only for video stores to have a version to then rent out. And so what would happen is that when we sold VHS tapes at a wholesale price of, say, $30 a piece, you didn't really have to sell too many to make money.
Right.
Then what happened is one person in the industry, my dad always traced it back to some executive of Warner Brothers or something who decided, well, we're not going to do this rental thing anymore. Now we're going to start selling. And so then VHSs ended up being $19.99 or something. It sort of made that business more difficult because now you had to sell, 10 times as many.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they were really raking in the cash back in the VHS days because not only were tapes retailing for $90 and there were tons of video stores around the country, but in the foreign territories, there were tons of video stores and they needed content. And they didn't care what the content was. So my dad had a series of movies. He had Princess Warrior, Time Barbarians, Eyes of the Serpent. The first movie I ever worked on was called Fraternity Demon. I mean, these crazy...
So maybe it didn't even have to be good.
It just had to be long enough on a tape, I
guess. It had to
guess.
sound good in the title and people...
Yeah, pretty much. You have good key art, because if you remember back in the day, which, younger people listening to podcasts now might not even remember these days, but, it was fun to go to a video store and go browse the aisles and look at key art and pick a movie just based off the key art, or based on how stupid it looks. Or the witchcraft thing worked really well because that was a pentagram with a beautiful girl at the bottom of it, and it was, this sort of sexy horror thing. So, that was a slam dunk, So my dad eventually, all the movies he shot on film, he sold to Troma. And then the other video films, they're really, really junky. And he still goes to the office a couple hours a day, but he's turning 85 this year. And so that's all fizzled away. But anyways, to get to, if you want me to continue on and elaborate, I had no interest in making movies. I went to architecture school. And when I graduated architecture school, I worked for a year at a design firm. And after 1 year working, I was going to go back and get my master's in architecture. And my father was making that movie, Fraternity Demon. Mm-hmm. So my brother and I said, well, let's go work on that film in the summer and go be production assistants on that film. And one thing led to another, and he ended up ADing, and I ended up production coordinating, even though we didn't know what we were doing. And I ended up getting the bug. Yeah. My brother went off to Harvard for architecture. I gave up architecture and just started making movies. So that's how it sort of all happened. Yeah.
Nice.
So you finished college at Boulder and then moved back to LA.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, by the way, I don't recommend it. In retrospect, if you're going to school in Boulder, I was like, I'm going to get done in 4 years. I'm on the 4-year plan. I'm going to get out of here. And now I look back, I'm like, what was I doing? I should have been on the 8-year plan. Why would I ever leave Boulder, Colorado? It's the most amazing place. It's a fantastic school. I took my son there a couple months ago to visit Boulder. We just mountain biked all around town. And I mean, it's paradise over there. So I don't know what I was doing leaving so early. I should have just been on like the 10-year, permanent college student plan.
Yeah, I went to Regis down in Denver, and I feel the same way. I was in such a hurry to get done and get out, and now I'm like, oh, shucks, what were you thinking?
I don't know. It's a different mentality when you're, 21, 22 years old, and I'm going to start my life. But, I would have no problem moving back to Boulder right now. It's a great place.
It's beautiful.
And living a college life.
I'd love that.
I just took my son to Duke University to look around, and he had a baseball camp there. And I'm like, I'm going to go back to college. This is amazing.
It's a lot more fun.
Yeah, and the food's better.
Plus, you also know how it's going to turn out, so it's a little bit less pressure.
Right, exactly.
So you kind of got an overview when you went back to Hollywood and LA because you worked for your father, right?
Yeah. So I worked for my father producing his movies. Mm-hmm. After 3 movies, I said, Dad, enough. I'm going to start producing your movies. So I started producing his movies. I think I produced the first one when I was 24, which was Witchcraft 5. And then I was running his video label. So we were packaging up videos and creating the art and selling them. And I was going with him to the foreign markets and doing foreign distribution with him. So, which is really important as a filmmaker. A lot of filmmakers, they learn production, but they don't know anything about foreign sales. They don't know anything about, back then it was domestic video. These days it would probably be VOD and streaming and all that.
I think that's the biggest problem with independent filmmakers now, because they can make the movie, but who's going to see it? How do you get it out there? And I think learning that is smart.
That's a big thing. In fact, any independent filmmaker should take a trip to Santa Monica. I think this year it's end of November, December. I can't remember, but the American Film Market, and just get a day pass. It might cost you $500 or something, but it's worth it. And just go wander around, because that's where you're going to really learn how to make a movie, how to sell a movie, what kind of movie you need to make, what kind of movies are being bought these days, what are being sold. I just did a panel discussion at the Beverly Hills Film Festival I put together called How to Make a Living Making Independent Film. And a lot of it was about understanding distribution. So me in my 20s, I got a very good understanding of distribution. And not just distribution, but when you understand distribution, you understand what to make and how you're going to make money. You know, it's great to make the film about the priest that rapes the whatever, and and it's really dramatic. But are you going to make money? It might be the most amazing film in the world, but maybe nobody's going to see it. So you kind of have to look at foreign distribution and see what's going to make money, what's out there. I mean, right now, female-centric thrillers and romantic comedies are what foreign territories buy in independent film. And you can afford to make that.
So your first film on your own, director dropped out, so you were already producing the movie, and then you got to step in.
Right. So I was hired to line produce that movie, and it was called Lethal Eviction. And I don't quite remember what the story was, but the director dropped out. My producer said, I tried to convince my producer to direct it. And I said, look, I'll AD and line produce it. You direct it. And he said, no. He said, how about if we co-direct it? I said, absolutely not. Don't ever co-direct a movie. Bad idea.
Two different visions.
Too many cooks in the kitchen is what it is.
It's not only that, but it's also that it really has no value for you later on. Because let's say you make a great movie, the people who hire you for the next movie, they're going to question, was it you that was the great vision, or was it the other person?
Oh, yeah.
Or if it's you together, now you need to bring on this other person. So I don't suggest ever co-directing a movie. Anyways, so then he was nice enough and said, well, why don't you direct it? So that was a guy named Gary Barkin. And so it was called Lethal Eviction. And it was kind of a crazy black thriller with a little kind of popcorn elements to it.
Okay. So, well, Jennifer Carpenter, I found it interesting because Jennifer Carpenter was in that, and shortly after, the very next year, Dexter came along. Did she know at the time she did she was going to be doing Dexter? And obviously, no one knew that it was going to be what it is, but
no. In fact, I'll tell you, it's a great story. In that, then we were Angela. I think it was Angela Bettis who was supposed to star in the movie. If you know who she is, she's done a lot of horror films and things, and she was really sick. And then at one point, Thora Birch was supposed to do the movie.
Okay.
And Thora Birch actually came to a read-through of it, or a costume fitting. She went to the location with us. We were with her parents. We thought it was a done deal, and then she just dropped out. I think what happened was her parents were trying to do the deal, and her agency didn't know. I don't know the whole story exactly, but she dropped out. So then we said to Angela Bettis. So Angela Bettis got really sick right before the movie with pneumonia, something really serious. And it was like maybe she wasn't going to get better for 3 months or something.
Oh, wow.
I think Angela Bettis back then had started in the Toolbox Murders and had some name value because of that. And that's where she sort of got. And if you look her up, she's done a lot of stuff. But so we said to Angela Bettis, we were really in a deep bind. I mean, we were only 5 days from shooting or something. We said, do you know anybody who could play this part? Do you have any friends that you? And she said, I've got this friend named Jennifer Carpenter. She went to Juilliard, and she just came out to L.A. She was only in, I think, White Chicks was the only movie that she had been in.
Wow.
And so we called up Jennifer. We said, why don't you come to the office? Gary had an office in Brentwood. Come to the office, and let's just audition you. So she comes in, And she has the sides, and she's sitting at the desk, and she starts reading, and it was spectacular. Like, when like somebody is the real deal.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened with Jennifer Carpenter is, from what I understand, she went to Juilliard, and then she was in The Crucible on Broadway with Laura Linney and Liam Neeson.
Okay.
And Laura Linney, from what I understand, said to her, "You're amazing. You need to come to Hollywood. I'm going to make you famous." Something like that.
Nice.
So thankfully, I got her first, and kind of second. But I mean, this was the first real big role, I think. And so in that audition in the office, just Gary and I there, she was amazing. I mean, it was like kind of shocking how good she was. And we both looked at each other and we're like, nod, yeah, she's hired.
Yeah.
So we hired her, and we ended up on that movie with Judd Nelson, James Avery, who's the father from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Stacey Dash from Clueless, Michael Learned, the mother from The Waltons. It was a great cast. These other guys that are still friends of mine now, Mark Chinook, Adam Huss, and Marshall Cook. I mean, it was a really great all-around cast, So it was a fun film to make. I mean, it came out as Lethal Eviction, and for some reason later the name changed to Grayson Arms. I don't know why, but, it got re-released or something. But it's a fun movie.
Nice.
We made it in like 14 days or something, which is more than my movies now that I make.
Oh, my goodness.
And by the way, that's the first and last film I directed on film. I
Really?
never directed another movie on film since then.
And now it's
Everything
all digital.
Digital.
Yeah, which I'm a fan of. I have no issue with digital. In fact, I got an email from a Kodak rep the other day asking me about shooting on film, and I wrote back this. It wasn't nasty, but it was kind of like, there is no way I'm ever going to shoot on film again unless I'm doing a $200 million budget.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the money for it. But film's very expensive, and my mother and your mother can't tell the difference, and the buyers have no problem with 4K digital, and so...
I was going to say, I saw Dunkirk in the, I'm going to get the millimeter wrong, 60 or 70, whatever it was shot in, and on film in the theater. And honestly, except for just a couple, like, pops in the the thing, I didn't know I was watching film until the end of the movie when there was a little bit of silence and you could hear the projector. But, like, that was it.
Yeah,
so you can't, I don't think you can tell.
No, and you can do so much to video these days. You can make it look like film. You can add all these different filters or LUTs that we call them, lookup tables that actually mimic the type of film you want to shoot, a Kodak or a Fuji or something. Mm-hmm. So I just the thing with film is film costs. Well, back in the day when we used to shoot film, it was basically $1 a foot is the way you look at it. The cost of the film, the cost of the transfers. So if you're shooting a low budget feature film, let's say you're running 150,000, 200,000 feet of film to the camera, that's $200,000, Right. So if you're making a $300,000 budget, well, your budget's now $500,000. And are you going to get back that $200,000 because you shot on film? Absolutely not. And again, the buyers have no problem. They accept it. It looks great. It's really, shooting digital versus film is really a question of how you know how to use your cameras and your lenses and your shots and framing your shots and your depth of field and your compositions, and has less to do with film versus video. So,
were you comfortable on set that first time you were directing, or were there moments where you're questioning yourself?
No, I didn't start directing until I had produced something like 30 movies and AD'd something like 15 films. So I didn't want to be the guy who started. First of all, I didn't know I wanted to be a director. It didn't even dawn on me to direct movies. I mean, I wanted to be an architect, and then I started producing movies for my dad. And as I was producing movies and ADing these movies, I'm realizing that movies are all, first of all, they're architecture. When you block a scene, when you shoot a scene, when you compose a scene, it's within a structure, it's within a building. And even if you're out in the desert and you have people, the people become the architecture. So it's composition, it's color, it's perspective, it's all these things. It's actually everything that architecture school teaches you. It's design process. Right. Architecture school teaches you that. When you build a building, you have to have the bathrooms, you have to have the bedrooms, you have to whatever it might be. So the first shot of the first movie I directed was this big, long Steadicam shot. It was actually pretty cool. It started on the outside. A car drives up, follows a guy, walks in the building. We had to do a stop change right on the lens, go up the stairs. We had a dolly up there that we cut a hole in the ceiling, and the dolly lifts the Steadicam operator up into the ceiling, and the actor goes up these other stairs into the attic, and it follows this big, long Steadicam shot. which, by the way, I don't think I've done a shot that complicated since.
Wow.
But it was like my first shot of my first movie. So I called my dad after shooting that shot, and I said, Dad, architecture school wasn't a waste of time. It all applies to film directing. So first of all, I didn't want to start directing until I knew more, what I felt as much or more than anybody on set about making movies and directing. And I wanted to really understand, the main thing about directing is directing is really about blocking a scene. It's not actually directing your actors. Your actors are prepared. They're professional. They come ready. A director, I always say, it's not my job to direct my actors. It's my job to tell them where to go. My job to direct my crew. That's much harder. A lot of times when directors don't know what they're doing, they don't understand filmmaking, they don't understand the process, they don't know lenses, they don't know where to put the camera, they don't know how to move the camera, they don't know how to tell their crew what they want. If they don't like the lighting, they can't say, hey, move that 1200 back, or give me some negative fill. They don't know all that stuff. So what they'll do is they'll go work with the actors, and then the actors will be annoyed because now I've got this director who doesn't know anything about making movies, whispering in my ear,
telling me what to do.
Right. Think of the color blue, So, and what's funny is the bigger movies you do and the better actors you work with, the less you have to direct them. I mean, when I directed Val Kilmer on my movie White Earth's Revenge, I didn't direct Val Kilmer. I don't tell Val Kilmer what to do. I tell him where to go. Sure. Unless there's little things, little adjustments. When you work with kids, you have to direct the kids, and you have to sometimes even have to give them line readings, But 99% of the time, actors are prepared. They have a take on it. They know what they're doing. You've already discussed it a little bit with them. And lately, I work with an actor named Michael Welch, who's all the Twilight movies. He is so good, and he will write up 1 or 2 pages of just like history and texture on the character, and he'll start telling me about it. And he's like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "I didn't even think about that. So this is amazing," And then I don't have to direct Michael Welch anymore. I just have to tell him where to go.
Nice.
So back to your question about the first time on set, I felt very comfortable because I'd produced so many movies and AD'd so many movies. ADing is really, I think, the best way to become a director. And in that, editing is good, script supervising is good, but when you're a director, you're the leader of the set. You have to believe in what you're putting the crew through. The crew has to feel like, well, he's the first one up the hill and he's checked it out already, so everybody can follow behind. You have to be the leader. So when you AD a movie, you should really take on the role as the leader of that set. I AD'd for Al Pacino, a movie that Al Pacino directed and starred in, and I was his AD. And, I've got to be on the ball. I got to be commanding. I got to help him when he's on camera so that he feels comfortable. And so it's a great way to, and the better the AD you are, the more you're actually sort of directing in some ways. The director might say, well, I want to just set up a tracking shot with the dolly going across here. And then, the AD can really go, okay, you just stay in your chair, you go work with your actors, I'll go set it all up, So the better you are as an AD and the more proactive you are, the more you're working on your directing skills. And also if you're a good AD, the director might say, look, there's some B unit things here, some insert shots, why don't you go off and shoot that? So now you're directing, And so my experience line producing and producing movies, and then really assistant directing movies, because when you're ADing, you're in the game. I look at movies and movie sets as concentric circles. There's the inner circle, which is where everybody's filming and working, which is where the DP is and the director and the AD and the actors. And then there's the peripheral circle, which is where the honey wagons are and the second AD and the trailers and makeup and everything. And then there's a way outer circle, which is just like the neighbors who want to give you help. And
you've had that too, it sounds like.
Oh yeah. There's mostly in LA. So a producer generally lives on the way outer circle or on that second concentric circle. They never really live on the inner circle because they're moving in and out of that, But an AD lives in that inner circle. So the more you're working in that inner circle, the more experience you get, the more comfortable you are when it's time for you to start directing.
So after Lethal Eviction, you kind of turned to the horror genre a little bit. Were you approached to do these 3 films? And I'm talking about the Ed Gein, Richard Speck, and Ted Bundy projects. Or is this something that you had come up with?
No, well, there's more of them, actually. But What happens, and it's a kind of a pet peeve of mine with my career and other filmmakers' careers, is that we generally don't decide what we want to make. We're actually hired to make a movie.
Okay.
If I wanted to make movies, and let's say I had all the money in the world and I was going to go off and make movies, I'd probably make movies that are very personal to me, or very, or I might go off and make some crazy sci-fi movie like an Alien or something, or whatever it might be. But when you're trying to make a living making independent film, if someone says to you, "Hey, I want you to make these movies," you're not going to turn them down. So what happened was a gentleman named Barry Barnholtz. I had met him previously at the film markets, and he had known my dad, and he had heard of me, and I had been making movies for some other guys, Rich Goldberg and Mark Greenberg, and I made The Graveyard for them, and I made Grim Reaper for them, and I directed. I also produced other movies for them. And so word got around that I was making movies. And I was making low-budget movies that were selling and that had good production values. So Barry brought me in the office. He said he wanted to make a horror movie. So I had never written a film before. And I had directed Lethal Eviction, Grim Reaper, and The Graveyard. I think I directed 3 movies by then, maybe 4. So Barry said, "I want to make movies for, $100,000. I said, "Okay, let's do it." He said, I said, "Do you have any scripts?" He goes, "No." He said, "Do you have any scripts?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, then write a script." So he hired me to write a script, and I didn't know I could write scripts, but I wrote the script in like 3 days.
Wow.
And that movie was called A Dead Calling, and it ended up starring Sid Haig, Leslie Easterbrook, an actress named Alexandra Holden, a friend of mine named John Burke. So I wrote that film and produced it, and directed it, and made the film in something like 10 days. My wife is in it. My wife plays a ghost.
Nice.
So I made that movie for Barry. Lionsgate ended up releasing it. It had to put some nice artwork on it, and Barry was happy. So then Barry, and there's a guy who worked for Barry named Melvin Butters, and Melvin is a horror film fanatic. And Melvin was really pushing on Barry to do films based on serial killers.
Okay.
Because, again, we're looking at making movies and making money making movies, and you don't really have money for celebrities. So what their concept was, pick famous serial killers and make movies about them.
Sure.
And, the audience will either pick them up at the video store, or, back then it was still DVD, VHS. It was DVD and some VHS. So I think that Ed Gein was first. And Ed Gein, kind of, people had a following about Ed Gein. And we made Ed Gein. So I wrote Ed Gein. We shot it in like 10 days, made it for like $100,000. And, and that movie did really well.
And it had Kane Hodder in it from Friday the 13th.
Yes. And that's another pet peeve of mine about people not understanding how this business works. Yes, Kane Hodder does not look anything like Ed Gein. If you read all of the crazy comments I get on the internet, and people just ripping the crap out of my movies, because they love to compare. This is the thing about making movies is that we, if I was going to make a car, right? If I was going to, Elon Musk, for instance, came out with Tesla, and he's put billions of dollars in this company,
right.
Got the government to give him billions of dollars, and he made a car company, and he puts out cars that can compete with every other car manufacturer out there. The crazy thing about movies is that we can make movies for virtually nothing and yet still compete with all of the big studio movies out there, and that's really true. I mean, my friend Terry is one of the producers of Robert Pattinson's movie Good Time coming out. They shot that thing all over the streets of New York. The reason why it's being seen so much is Robert Pattinson is in it.
Right.
But I don't know what the budget of that movie was, but it wasn't $250 million, and that movie's theatrical and it's going to be seen by a lot of people. So that's the really interesting thing I think about films is that if you really care about your story, or if you really go off and make a good movie, it can be very successful and play in theaters and take a run at studios. You can't do that manufacturing cars, for instance, So the Ed Gein thing, what happened was, I think Melvin gave Barry a list of actors that have value in the market in the horror film world. And one of them was Kane Hodder. And Kane Hodder looks nothing like Ed Gein, but is that really important? What's important is Kane Hodder is the star of the movie. Kane Hodder's going to be on the cover. And Kane Hodder, by the way, he was Jason from the Friday the 13th movies. He always had a mask on. I had no idea of his acting ability, but man, he really brought it. I don't know if you've seen the movie or any of his other stuff from my movies, but Kane Hodder can act. He's really good, and he can bring it. And I thought he was great in that film. And I know Kane's very happy with the movie. I know that. And he was in my BTK movie, which, if you really want to see Kane Hodder, see BTK, because he does a great impersonation of this guy, Dennis Rader, which, by the way, BTK, that's an example of a movie where I did not want to duplicate the actual murders and victimize those families more than they've already had to deal with, because that's a very recent story. So my BTK movie doesn't actually display any of those real murders at all. It's really just a study on the character of this BTK character, which Kane Hodder really embodied. And Kane Hodder even put me in his autobiography, thanking me as like the first guy to really believe him as an actor. So Kane Hodder and I, we really get along great. He's a good friend, and he's a great guy. But Ed Gein is a perfect example of a movie where it's designed. We're going to make a horror film. We're going to make it on a low budget. We're going to get Michael Berryman, Priscilla Barnes, Kane Hodder to star in it. Yes, Kane Hodder does not look like Ed Gein, but is the audience going to go? Is the audience going to buy the movie, and is the movie going to make money starring somebody else versus Kane Hodder? And Kane Hodder wanted to do the movie. So, it's kind of how the business works of making films, mostly low budget movies. So that basically led to more of those types of films. So Barry said, okay, well, Dead Calling did good.
Right.
Ed Gein did well. So let's pick another serial killer. So then we picked, I don't know which one was next, maybe Richard Speck. Sure. So we did the Richard Speck story. Then we did the Bundy story. Then we did Boston Strangler with David Faustino, So, and then I did a Dracula movie, because Dracula is famous,
Yeah.
So, and those were all they were all successful, and almost all of them. I think only Boston Strangler wasn't distributed by Lionsgate. That was distributed by Genius, but they all did well, and you can still find them on the internet today or on pay-per-view, and but they were made for $125,000 in 10 days.
Wow.
So your wife's in your movies a lot. She's an actress, obviously,
Yes.
but your son was in the Richard Speck movie. And he must have been probably like 7 years old or something at the time.
My son, I would put him in little pieces here and there that it was not really to give him an acting career. It was just a really nice way to encapsulate that moment in time in his life. Mm-hmm. So one of the funniest stories, which he's 15 now, so he really just learned this, but he actually plays little Ed Gein. There's a scene in Ed Gein where Kane Hodder kills my wife in a bar, and he strangles her. Then she's on a table in his barn, and he cuts her head off. Now, the MPAA wouldn't let us have her head actually cutting off.
Yeah.
So you see him like just about to cut her head off. And after he does that, Kane Hodder, he leans up on the table and he kind of thinks, and I push in on him. And then we have this flashback to little Ed Gein running free and happy on the farm. And that's my son. So my
Doesn't
son
that
just
scare the daylights out of him?
Well, that's why I didn't tell him till he turned 15.
Oh, he just found out.
Because I would just have nightmares forever. Like, oh my God, I think I saw this guy try to cut my mom's head off.
Well, so basically my son chopped his mother's head off in a movie. Kind of, So, it's fun family stuff. But he actually had
it's normal.
He actually had a speaking part in 16 and Missing, which was a Lifetime movie, and he did really well, but he doesn't want to act anymore.
I was going to ask. He's a baseball guy. He's not.
He's a baseball guy. He's really smart, and he's all about. He wants to go to college and major in the classics in marine biology, and he's already mastering Latin, and he loves history, and but he does work on my shoots now, and actually now he operates camera.
Oh, he's cheap help.
So he's got a film kind of background, and he'll always have that to fall back on. Or he realizes, marine biologists might not make a lot of money. Maybe you have to make movies about
marine biology.
So,
that could work.
So he appreciates his production experience that he has. First, I made him a PA on the movies. He's like, Dad, I really don't like
running for stuff.
Running for stuff, like making sure the craft service table looks good. But then I put him on the camera. And now he can operate camera and pull focus at the same time. He understands framing. He understands composition. And so,
what fantastic skills.
Yeah.
But and he's also interested in something you were doing. So there's bonding there, too.
Oh, there's a
And
lot
if his mom's in the movie, all the better. It's a family.
Oh
thing.
yeah, it's a great thing. It really is. It's a pretty cool thing to do for a living, and actually, by the way, the reason my wife and I met is because my wife was directing and starring in a movie called Choosing Matthias, and she was looking for a line producer, and she was in a play or a short film with a friend of mine named Corbin Timbrook, and the guy directing is an actor named Bo Hopkins. Bo Hopkins was been around for years and years and years, and she said, I'm looking for a line producer for my movie. And I had just finished a movie with Corbin and Bo called Cracking the Floor. And I was line producing that and 18 that. And they said, well, why don't you try this guy, Mike Feifer? So my wife calls me. We have this lunch meeting that felt like kind of a lunch meeting / date. The next day, I just happened to go into San Diego for a wedding. And her sister lived down there. And her sister was the executive producer. And I met her sister. We got along great, and they hired me to make the movie. So we started location scouting, and we were falling in love and location scouting at the same time.
Oh,
and
cute.
We said, if we can make this movie together, we should be married. And we literally got married in 6 months, and it's now been 16 and a half years, and we have a son because of it. So yeah, talk about family. I mean, I met my wife because she hired me to make a movie for her.
That's amazing.
That is awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah.
It is. And what's pretty cool about, again, the reason why I put my son in these movies is because it's kind of our photo album for our life. So whenever we go back and watch Choosing Matthias, it has a special place in our hearts because that's the movie that we made together, you know? So, yeah, pretty cool.
That is cool.
So sometime around 2008, moved away from the horror genre a little bit, and you started doing the annual Christmas movies, which I feel like you've been doing since then.
I think those will never really stop. Again, it's a business. Again, we're talking about what sells. In that case, Barry Barnholtz teamed up with a guy named Jeff Shank, and they asked me to make a movie called The Christmas Proposal. I think that was the first one, and that starred David O'Donnell, Nicole Eggert,
Tom Arnold,
Sarah Thompson, and we did well with that one, and it came out great. So then we made the thing that really kind of settled that all in was The Dog Who Saved Christmas. I directed and produced The Dog Who Saved Christmas, The Dog Who Saved Christmas Vacation, and The Dog Who Saved the Holidays. I did not do The Dog Who Saved Halloween, Summer, or Easter. But I've also done a bunch of other. I mean, the most recent Christmas movie I did was Christmas with the Andersons. I shot last year. It played this last Christmas. It's an Ion Channel movie, so it'll probably play again.
People always say, don't make movies with kids and animals, and now you're doing both.
Adults are much more difficult.
Oh.
I'm being totally honest with you.
What about the dogs? I mean, obviously they're well trained and stuff, but does that make it really frustrating for the actors if the animal doesn't do what it's supposed to do?
The animal does everything they're supposed to do. It's really quite amazing, to tell you the truth. The key to dog training in movies, what I found, is that they don't feed the dogs breakfast. A dog, when it's acting, gets fed all throughout the day. It eats just as much as any normal dog, but it's getting its food throughout the day. So the dog has incentive to do the things that it's supposed to do and to work because it didn't eat breakfast. It's eating throughout the day. So because if you feed the dog first, it's not going to do anything because it's full. So that's part of one of the tricks of dog training for movies. Also, there are dogs that come from trainers who know what they're doing. This guy, Jim Rodriguez from Jungle Exotics, and Debbie Pearl from Pause for Effects. They're both great people. They're really good trainers. And I can literally say, look, I need the dog to jump up on the bed, grab this hat, run off the bed, run down the hallway, right? So I'll tell the trainer that. Meanwhile, I'll work with my camera crew, set up the cameras. Meanwhile, the trainer's doing all of those things. So we come back ready to shoot it. The dog gets it one take.
Wow.
I mean, it only takes them 5 minutes. You know, they might do things like put a treat under the hat. They might do something. They have a buzzer where the dog runs to the buzzer, or, you know, they never do anything I've never seen a trainer do anything that's like bad or dangerous for a dog. It's actually really quite, they're really well taken care of, and the trainers work really, and there's a lot of love there with the animals. So that's pretty cool, actually. So the animals are easy to work with, actually. It takes less time for the animal to figure out what to do than it is for the actors to figure out what they're doing.
Huh. Wow.
So, and then kids are really, you know, kids are great. I mean, they always know their dialogue. Maybe the only issue I ever have with a kid is like looking at the camera. And you have to tell them, don't look at the lens, you know, look at your fake mom or something. Yeah, kids are really, really easy, and they're really loving, and they're really sweet, and they're really happy to be there, and they don't come with baggage. Their parents sometimes do.
I was going to ask. The parents maybe a little bit.
I was going to say, gotta love those stage moms.
They're not bad at all. I have a great relationship with all the stage moms I've ever worked with, and there's a lot of them, and they're actually really good. Periodically, like I did a movie where we had like 3 sets of babies, and one of the moms that she wasn't experienced because her baby was only like 3 months old. Mm-hmm. Would just disappear, and my costume designer's taking care of the baby, and then
she went to lunch. She's gonna.
And then we're shooting a scene, and she comes in with the baby. The baby's in different wardrobe. She's like, "We have to go." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
So periodically that happens, but really, actually, the most difficult are generally adults because they come with their own baggage, and whether they show up on time or whether their makeup's not ready to come out of the trailer, whether they're insecure, or just dealing. I mean, Tom Arnold, I've worked with him twice, 1 day each time. So what we do with Tom Arnold is we shoot like 10 pages of material with Tom Arnold in 1 day. So he's in 10% of the movie, but only works 1 day. Uh-huh. And he's hilarious and he's awesome, but he's really actually very insecure about getting all the dialogue and whether he's funny or whatever. And you sort of have to have patience with him and let him warm up. And then before you know it, he's like, throwing out this amazing stuff. He knows all the dialogue 100%. It's funny. He's improving, and you've got magic on camera.
Wow. See, so, I don't see that when I see Tom Arnold, and that's probably why. Because he gets over. I mean, I'm shocked to hear that he's insecure, and I always thought I was going to ask you, is he just cracking jokes between takes and all that? But it doesn't sound like.
He's very serious in between takes. Actually, he's a little manic, and he knows it, and I mean, it's great. It's part of the process. I mean, I really like both days. I mean, it's only 2 days, right. and yet he's in 10% of those movies. So it feels like you worked with him a lot because you accomplished so much. And so it's just a process, and you have to know how to work it. I mean, I actually really enjoy directing comedy because I like finding the funny. I'm always saying find the funny, and comedy always requires like something in the foreground, something in the midground, and something in the background, and then letting an actor sort of take something and then go with it. And then trying to get an actor to give you more. An actor might say, well, that's not on the script. I'm not doing that. And then before you know it, not only are they doing that, but they're giving you more, So it's a lot of psychology and how to deal with people and what their process is. And Tom Arnold is pretty awesome, but you have to kind of get a sense of what his thing is. And I just put it down to a little bit of insecurity because I mean, a lot of comedians are like that. They're not sure if what they're doing is funny. But we know it is, but right. they question it, So
I'm going to ask you, our show is called Fan Counters. So we have to ask you about any kind of encounters that you've had with any fans or you've witnessed with any other actors.
Well, I don't have fans. That's a misnomer. In fact, I think I have haters. Because again, for instance, I made which film was it? I made a serial killer film. Maybe it was Boston Strangler or something. And I'm reading somebody wrote on the internet, and they compared my movie to David Fincher's Zodiac. Okay, that's a $200 million film shot in 120 days, over 2 years or something. Oh, whereas my film was made in 10 days. I'm like, oh my God, how could you hate me? And how could you compare those two? So, anyways, I think one thing that's interesting, I really miss doing DVD commentaries. We don't do them anymore because DVDs don't really sell anymore.
Right.
But I think DVD commentaries were really cool. And I always enjoyed talking about movie making on DVD commentaries. And once I was producing a music video for a Panasonic product. And we had this really cool, Lincoln Continental car that was a very expensive, immaculate 1960s Lincoln Continental or something. And the guy who owned it was babysitting it. He was just there making sure we didn't hurt it.
Right.
And we started talking movies. I said, well, what do you do other than, your cars? He said, well, I try to produce movies and things. And we started talking about it. And we started talking about DVD commentaries. And he says to me, there's this one DVD commentary, and it's my favorite one. And I listen to it all the time. And I get so much information out of it. And I can't believe how this guy just, says so much. And I really learned from it. And I'm like, what's that? And he said, Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield. I'm like, what?
That's you.
I'm the commentary.
I'm the guy
I mean,
you're learning from.
Crazy. It was a crazy coincidence. Here's another crazy coincidence. I did this movie called Drifter Henry Lee Lucas with Antonio Sabato, and I needed Henry Lee Lucas as a teenager. And it just turns out that our real estate agent, Janine Cannell, is a friend of ours who sold our house, and she's a friend of ours. Her husband is Italian. Her son looks very Italian, and he looks kind of like Antonio Sabato as a teenager. And he had never really acted before, but he auditioned for me, and I thought he was really good. And so his name's Nicholas Cannell. So Nick was in the movie, and he had a really nice part in the movie, and he killed the girl in the movie. And
that was a nice part.
It was the beginning stages of a serial killer. So Nicholas got out of movies. He went off to, I don't know, Princeton or some Ivy League school, Syracuse. I don't know what it was, somewhere up in upstate. And the movie was released and came out and everything. And he's taking a film class in college. And he's in a class of like 100, 200 students or something. And the professor says, listen, I found this movie, and I think it's really valuable for you guys to watch because it's really got a lot of production value. And I know the movie was made really inexpensively, but it really tells the story well and this and that. And he holds up the movie and goes, it's this movie Drifter Henry Lee Lucas. and he's like, oh, my God, that's my movie. And then, I mean, here they are 3,000 miles away from L.A.
Yeah.
They have no idea that he's an actor, and the only movie he's ever been in. And the professor holds up this movie and is like, there's this movie. I mean, the whole class was just completely flabbergasted.
That's
shocked,
cute.
That's a good moment for him, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It's got to be pretty cool, So
do you have fans that would, if you're shooting on location somewhere, that have either interrupted the process or tried to get their way on set to see, whoever? I mean,
good question. It doesn't really happen very often. I think it's funny sometimes if we shoot in Hollywood and a Star Tours bus shows up, or when they pass by. I think that's kind of funny. Like if I'm shooting with like Haley Duff and a Star Tours bus passes by, and I don't even know that Haley Duff is standing right there. I always think that's amusing.
You've mentioned Christy Carlson Romano a couple times, Haley Duff. Now, and we've talked about the fact that when actors are good, you kind of just let them do their thing. So is that the kind of director you are, where they have some freedom to create things with their character and kind of roll with it? Or?
Yeah, I really, and I think it's a really good tip for young directors. What I really like to let my actors know is they never have to say the script verbatim. Mostly my dialogue, my scripts. Sometimes I direct other people's scripts, and usually I polish them or I direct my stuff. But no matter what, I always tell my actors, never feel like you have to say exactly what's on the page, because what's written on the page, someone's on their like me. I like to write on my couch or on my bed, and I'm with that scene. I write that scene in 20 minutes, and I'm done in a way. They have to live with it. They're going to know that material better than me. They're going to know their character. They're going to know if their character says it like that, or they might make adjustments. So you give them the freedom, dialogue-wise, to do what they need to do, and then you trust them that they know their character, and they're going to ultimately know their character better than you do.
So when we're talking about the actors, talk to me about your involvement in casting. Are you involved in the casting? Are you just sent people and...
Well, that's a very good question. I'm involved in all the casting, yes. But, Kane Hodder is a perfect example. A lot of times we're selecting actors based off of, and it's unfortunate, but it is the business. We're selecting actors based off of what experience they have in the back. And, for instance, very good friend of mine who I love dearly, Bodie Bliss. Okay. Bodie starred in 3 or 4 of my movies. She's amazing. When we first hired her, I didn't know who Bodie Bliss was, but she had been on CSI Miami for like 80 episodes. And the producers thought that she had value because she was on CSI Miami. CSI Miami plays in the foreign markets. And so Bodie Bliss agreed to do a movie. And so there she is. So do I have say in that casting? We might mold the list of actors that are going to go out. But on those lead actors, generally it's kind of who's got some either name value or they've been on television shows and things. And who's going to do the movie? That's always a thing too. I mean, they're not knocking down my door to do my movies. Well,
I was just going to say, I see some repetition of some of the same actors in your movies.
Oftentimes, So that's really an issue of if I've worked with a name actor before, and like, for instance, Ashley Scott. Ashley Scott's become a good friend of mine. She's fantastic. And I might just call her up and say, hey, I got a movie. You want to star in it? The position I have as a producer and a director, it's very hard getting parts in Hollywood. It's very, very difficult. And so I have an opportunity, and my wife, we feel this way, that we have an opportunity to bless people with parts. I mean, we really, we called up 3 friends, actually 3 people we gave parts to today. They're friends of friends who they're people that they really, really like a lot. And they're actors, but it's hard to get parts. And they're friends of friends. And I'd rather give parts to them than some random person I don't know. And there's a lot of parts in movies that are judges and lawyers and doctors and paramedics and all that. And you don't need to audition for those. If you know actors, you work with actors a lot. My wife's in a theater group, so we have a lot of friends who are in that. They can handle those roles. And if you're a good enough director, you can shape those roles if you need. When it comes to the name actors, then we have to go through the funny thing about name actors is we never get to actually audition name actors. They're really sight unseen. I mean, Amanda Clayton, who started my movie Cradle Swapping, she did a fantastic job. I love her to death. She's amazing. And Brandon Brosh, who starred opposite her, I could only look on the internet. And, once her name came up and on the list, and then we put the offer out to her and she agreed to do it, we didn't meet till the first day of shooting.
Oh, my goodness.
That's how the process really works on independent films. You don't really get a chance to go audition Amanda Clayton. I mean, you just don't need to, really. I mean, I can watch enough footage. I don't need to audition her to know whether she could play a mom who's upset because her baby's missing. Right. You know what I mean?
So if you're making these movies in 10 days, about how many movies are you making a year?
So I average 3 to 6 movies a year.
Okay.
So I've already made 3 movies this year. I start my 4th one in September. And I have contracts to do at least 2 more by the end of the year.
Oh, nice.
So I can actually shoot even more movies. But what happens is there's sometimes a bit of a delay between the executive producers saying which movie they want to do, me writing the script, the green light, that's actually. But sure. if I had 10 scripts and I had the money for 10 movies, I could just pump them all out, like literally
one after another.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you and I have a mutual friend. Music producer, film scorer, Brandon Jarrett. So he's been doing a lot of your film scores lately and over the past few years. And I have not seen A Woman Deceived yet, but I just found out that he's in it. You used him. How did that happen? He's pretty convincible, I understand, but... Well, let me say this, too. This is an important thing to me also, which is that generally a lot of Hollywood movies star white people. And a lot of times I don't have a choice in that casting because what happens is this movie's selling the foreign markets and people have a bit of a misnomer about why so many white people are cast in movies. And it's actually, I think, more like because the foreign territories are sort of racist and they don't want to buy movies unless it's like white Hollywood. And it's very upsetting to me because I have a lot of friends who are not white and would be great starring in these movies. But it's because those lead actors, it's a business decision made by others, not by me. So what I do is I try to fill up my movies as much as possible with non-Caucasian actors in every other part I can. If I have lead roles that are, and I have this friend of mine that's just this, her name is Preeti Desai, and she's this gorgeous Indian actress, and she's amazing, and she's been in 2 of my last films, and one of the reasons I gave her the part is because she's not white, and that's not, it's just because I think it's important for us to make sure that we cast a movie keeping in mind, mostly in America, we're a melting pot of people, so that's important to think about when casting a movie, I think. And so I take that really seriously, actually. So Brandon, for instance, is African-American. He's also an actor who, he's an actor who misses acting because he doesn't act anymore because he's a music composer. And so he didn't ask for a part, but I know that he's still an actor at heart. And there was a doctor role, and I said, Brandon, you're playing the doctor. He's like, what? And I said, you're playing that doctor. And it was just a small thing, and I know he could pull it off, but it's a nice opportunity for Brandon. He's my friend. Put him in the movie. It's good for him to get his, keep his SAG thing going. And he's not white.
you know?
There you go.
And,
It accomplishes a lot of goals.
We appreciate the diversity.
Brandon is brilliant, and he's composed my movies for like the last 20 movies, and he's a very good friend. So you asked about his acting, but as a music composer, he's really a brilliant guy.
So music is really essential for the feeling and the mood of the scene. So tell me about your involvement with composers like Brandon that lead to, getting the whole feel of the movie just the way you want it. How involved are you?
If you hire the right person, you actually don't have to be that involved. Just like my editors. I have good editors. They edit the movie. They give me a rough cut. Then I give them notes. Then they give me the cut back. Then I give them notes. And then I get in the room with them. And I only need to be in the room with them for 1 or 2 days because they're good and they know what they're doing. Brandon's good. He knows what he's doing. He'll get the script ahead of time. Maybe he'll visit set. Maybe we'll talk a brief discussion. And then I just let him go. And Brandon, when Brandon started composing movies, he started composing for me, really, movies. And the main thing I told him, and I tell any composer, is when you're composing, mostly this type of movie, is think about what you want the audience to feel as you're composing. And that's what your main direction should be when you're composing a movie. Brandon really has there's also a sort of a system for doing it. There's a way that it should be done. And he's got it down. He's with the program, and so he knows what to do. He also knows he writes songs. I mean, I just had this movie called A Star for Christmas that was originally called Hollywood Holiday, and he writes this song called Hollywood Holiday, and the lyrics are exactly like match the movie. He read the script, he saw the movie, he wrote the song, and he has a song that opens the movie up called Hollywood Holiday, and it's brilliant. So he'll compose not only the soundtrack, I mean the composition of the movie, but he'll also write songs that are lyric specific to the movie, which I just think is and he'll perform, or he'll have other people come in and perform them, and it is really quite brilliant. And what it does though is I don't think, I mean I'll come and I'll listen to the entire what he's done. I'll have some comments here and there. Maybe it'll take him a quarter of a day to fix, and we're done. That's it. But it's a working relationship we've developed, and he's brilliant. Yeah,
we're kind of hitting our time, so I want to use, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I appreciate you being with us.
Sure.
But before you go, I am really curious about your experiences back in 2009. You directed Brittany Murphy in Abandon. First of all, I thought it was a brilliant movie. I'm guessing you're going to tell me if I'm wrong or not, but sort of low budget because it was really all just one location, correct?
Well, it's funny because I saw that in your notes. First of all, it was only 11 days. It was a low budget movie. It wasn't actually one location. It was actually 3 that I made look like one location because I needed an abandoned hospital. So I used Linda Vista Hospital in Boyle Heights, which now you can't shoot at anymore. It's now been converted into condos. I haven't been there in a while, but it used to be this old Howard Hughes Santa Fe Railroad hospital, and it was considered like a ghost hospital. So I needed like the abandoned side. Then I needed the interior of a hospital, which I used a location in Van Nuys that used to be at Sherman Way in Van Nuys. Now that's condos also. Oh, wow. Hospitals are very difficult to find hospitals in Los Angeles. So that was the interior because that location had all the props. In fact, we even found medicine still in the cabinets in that hospital.
Oh, my goodness.
And then I needed an exterior to the hospital because that hospital didn't have a good enough exterior. It had an exterior, but it wasn't impressive enough. So I used LA Center Studios in downtown LA, which is the old, I think, Union 76 building, which is now a movie studio. And they shoot a lot. They shot Mad Men there, a lot of movies and things. And the exterior of that looks like a hospital. So it was actually kind of complicated. I had to use 3 different locations to make one hospital,
Well, I think you did it well because I can't tell that it was 3 different buildings.
Well, thanks. Regarding Brittany Murphy, it was interesting. I actually was not allowed to meet her or talk to her before filming that movie.
Wow.
And we didn't even know on the first day whether she was going to show up. I remember waiting for her on the first day. Everybody shows up. Dean Cain is there. Dean Cain started the movie with her. The crew's there. My costume designer couldn't even talk to her. My mate, nobody, and there she rolls up. There she is. She gets her trailer. She's with her husband, Simon. And I walk up and I introduce myself and I got the sweetest, warmest hug from her. And the moment I got that hug, I knew everything was going to be fine.
Sure.
She was really a sweetheart. I really, really liked her a lot. In fact, 2 days after she died, her husband, Simon, called me out of the blue and just said, I just wanted to call you because Brittany really liked you a lot. and I think she would have wanted me to call you. I don't know. I don't know if it was. I don't know if he was calling me because he knew I was going to get interviewed by NBC and Hollywood Reporter and all that, and wanted me to say nice things, or if he really felt that way. But I really felt that we had a really nice connection on that movie. Now, I just want to say that a lot of people on the internet, they love to rip the makeup and hair on that movie, and I just want to make sure, and it's always that we had no choice except for Simon, her husband, to be her makeup artist and hair person. Yeah, we had no choice. That was part of the deal. Simon to do hair and makeup. You see what it is. I could not. She was in love with Simon. They were a team. There's a point where you can't. You just you've got Brittany Murphy there. You can't really.
Yeah.
You can't make things more difficult on you.
So
you
he
can't
was the one on set doing adjustments and that kind of thing. Your people couldn't.
He did all of her makeup.
Yeah.
So when you watch the movie, her makeup is a little funky. She approved it. And you could think that maybe we did that because she was kind of an awkward girl in the movie, and she gets totally bamboozled, and maybe that's why. But really, honestly, it was because Simon did her makeup, and they had their own take on what her makeup and hair should look like, and I had no say in that. I was happy to have Brittany there.
Yeah,
she was a pleasure to work with. She was a sweetheart. No sign whatsoever of drugs and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I had her running through the parking lot, up and down stairs, going over counters. I had two other girls dressed up in her wardrobe so I could do even more like B-unit stuff because there was a lot of her running around. I was like fascinated with the fact that she could cry out of either eye. Like she could say, which eye do you want me to cry out of? And I'll do it. You could pick the right or left eye. She'd cry out of.
That is just weird.
It's weird, but it like lends to her weird brilliance. I mean, she could look at a page and know the dialogue instantly. I mean, she and I rewrote. I remember there was the scene. I didn't write the movie, and there was a scene that wasn't really working because it actually was kind of a complicated story, and we didn't really have, I don't know, but we rewrote a scene together on set. Like she and I just went off with a laptop and went to another hospital room, and she and I sat there and rewrote like a 3-page scene together. She was a neat girl, and it's really sad. And Simon was actually a very nice guy. I had no issues with Simon, and it's really sad that they're passed.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really sad because she was really there was a special something about her as a person that is probably what made her so congenial and so connected to the camera so much. That really came out in real life. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Anytime a celebrity like that passes, so suddenly, not only does everybody have a general curiosity about it, but it was one of her last films, and I think people start to wonder about, was it normal? And you're here to test it. It was.
And it was the last film she actually shot. There's another film that came out after it.
Right.
But from what I understand, I was the last director to direct her. So at least I know, though, that she had a great experience, that we had a really good time.
Yeah.
And it was a pleasure working with her. And it's sad. I wanted to know her more, and I wanted to work with her more,
We really do thank you for being part of our podcast and joining us today.
Thanks. It's fun. I can talk about movies all day long, and it's hard to shut me up. So,
oh, it's great. Thank you.
Feel free anytime more if you ever want to talk again. But I just enjoy making movies, and anytime I can talk to people about making movies and give them the idea that they can do it too, that makes me excited because it's a great way of life and it's a great process, and it's the most. It's like going away to camp. Like I met my wife making movies. I've met some of my best friends making movies, and it's not an ordinary job, but anybody can do it. And anybody can take an iPhone, which shoots 4K, if you use like Filmic Pro app, and you can get a DJI Osmo, which is a gyroscopically balanced. You can get little LED. You can make a movie, and you can make a movie look pretty darn good with very little. Just like we talked about with a car, I can't go make the next Tesla.
Sure.
Because I need billions of dollars. But you can literally make a good movie with a script and an iPhone, or a script and a Sony A6300 is a great camera. It's $1,000. It shoots 4K, shoots RAW, and for $1,000 camera, you can literally shoot television quality productions or theatrical quality productions with $1,000 Sony camera.
Cool.
Wow.
So that excites me, So, yeah,
I can tell. You love what you do, and you found your niche, and you do a great job. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Great meeting you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank
Look
you
forward to
very
talking
much.
again.
Yeah, we'll talk
Okay.
again.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Our thanks to Michael Feifer for joining us. If you want to find us on social media, just go on Facebook and search for Fan Counters. You can interact with us and like our page and follow us for more updates. Or if you would like, you can communicate with us by email. You can send an email to hello@fancounters.com.